Hey guys, it is Monday, and that means since it's April, I am talking about autism again today. If you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the new videos that come out just about every day, and hit like and definitely comment. I love hearing the stories, especially from those of you who are on the spectrum or have a loved one on the spectrum. I love hearing about your experiences and making those connections and getting to know you a little bit better. So any comment you want to leave, I would love to hear from you. Let's get into today's topic, which is about how when you have a child with autism, you become an advocate for your child. This wasn't something that I expected when Maggie received her diagnosis. I remember when I was writing about autism, I had been writing about it for a while. I mean, I wasn't writing about autism like I was I wasn't writing about autism like I was an autism expert or anything. I was writing about it as a mom. And at some point somebody said something like, well, maybe you're not cut out to be an advocate, maybe you're just a mom. For some reason that comment stuck with me for a really long time, and it would pop into my head over the years. Number one, because at that point it wasn't like I was setting out to be some advocate. I don't think Tessie was born yet. I had 4 little kids. I might have been pregnant with her. At that point I was always either like pregnant or about to be pregnant, and basically kind of how it was for roughly 8 years. And so it wasn't like that wasn't my goal. My goal was we were homeschooling and I had all of these little kids. I still have all of these little kids. And so it wasn't like this goal that I set for myself. My goal was homeschooling and getting dinner on the table, and Paul was in law school. So really survival and creating a home were pretty much my goal. Maggie was diagnosed, and so supporting her and getting her to therapy, getting her the resources that she needed, that was my goal. And so advocacy really, it wasn't my goal, but at the same time it's always been there in my mind that yeah, I am looking at the world. I'm looking at the world and seeing how people perceive people with autism, people who are on the spectrum, and there certainly is a part of me that sees the way that people with disabilities are treated, are talked about, and the injustice that's in that, that certainly wants to change that. I mean, absolutely, especially for me with that disability being autism, because when Maggie was diagnosed, I had friends who warned me, like, be careful when you start learning about autism, the media that you take in, and the things that you look at, because there's a lot out there that is really, really horrible. It's not all true. A lot of it is horrible. And it is. A lot of it is really horrible. A lot of the way that people talk about people with autism is really, really horrible. And one of the things that I have tried to do since Maggie's diagnosis in sharing our journey was to always be respectful and to share in a way and to speak in a way that when she grows up, if she watches it, it's not going to be some traumatic, devastating, horrible thing for her. There's some media out there that has been put out, that's been put out by certain large organizations that would be pretty devastating if you were a person with autism and you saw that your parents, if I saw my parents were speaking about me that way, I would be devastated. I wouldn't want anything to do with them. And so that was something that was always in my mind when I was writing and talking about autism. Anyways, so advocacy wasn't something that was at the top of my list of plans as a mom with a child who'd been diagnosed. And yet here we are, and I don't necessarily think of myself as an advocate. It's not like part of this checklist, like wake up in the morning, advocacy. But at the same time, I want to educate people about autism. I want to make the world better for my daughters who have autism. And I guess that's why I'm here. When I really started thinking about it was when it was time for Maggie to go to school. Because Maggie's process of getting into therapy really, for us, fell into place very easily. It was a lot easier than getting Tessie tested. We were just kind of at the right place at the right time when this program started, and she was accepted and everything happened very, very quickly. She started therapy. It was very easy, and I know it's not like that for a lot of people. We were very, very lucky, and it worked out perfectly. And when she was small, I was very, very committed to the idea of homeschooling our children. I was passionate about the idea of homeschooling, and I was going to homeschool all of our children, and that was that. And I was reading homeschooling books, and I had I was already looking at curriculums. I had curriculums planned out. I was into it. I wanted to do it. I was certain it was going to be the best thing for her, and I felt really, really strongly about it. And then reality kind of had other plans, and it was a humbling experience, but I was still gonna homeschool Sadie at that point. And I still thought I remember going into those first meetings with Maggie's team and telling them we were gonna homeschool, and no one ever discouraged me. Everyone was very, very encouraging, and I mean, as we went along, it became clearer and clearer to me, even after as I went through trainings, that that wasn't going to be best for Maggie, that she needed people with more training and more skills and even more patience than I have, and a smaller ratio of kids to teachers, because when she's at school, the ratio is pretty much 1-to-1 with all of the paras and therapists and teachers in her classroom. It is basically very, very close to 1-to-1, if not 1-to-1 at all times. Here, the ratio is 1-to-5. I mean, a lot of the time it's 1-to-5. School is just, it's better for her, and she has flourished at school. But getting her into school was not easy. So we had just moved, and I called the school district and told them that I had a daughter with autism. She tests as, I try to avoid the labels, but she tests on the more severe end of the autism spectrum, just to kind of give them an idea. Like, we can't just put her in a classroom. We need to have her evaluated. I'd be surprised if she could be in a normal classroom. Is there a way we could get the process going so that she can start kindergarten next year? So we can figure out where she needs to be to start kindergarten next year. And they were like, well, you know, a medical diagnosis doesn't mean that she will even get an educational diagnosis, and I am not certain that we have anything for her here. And I was like, okay. Well, why don't you bring in her information and we'll call you back? And so I brought in like all of these tests and evaluations and everything, just like, I mean, I had hundreds of pages of tests and evaluations from OTs and from the university and from doctors, and I brought in cognitive tests. I brought in everything, and I brought in my file, and they copied it, and they said they would call me, and nobody ever called me back. And at that point, her therapy center offered to keep her for another year full-time. They offered to bump her up to 8 to 3:30 and basically kind of do school. And at that point, I felt like I would rather she be someplace where she was wanted than fight the school. And so we did another year of her at therapy full-time. So she was there, she turned 5, and she stayed there. And as she was about to turn 6, it was March, I decided we were going to make this happen. Like, she needed to be in school. She was still going to be in therapy, but she needed to go to school. And now she's turning 6. Paul at this point had gotten a job, and he was working at a law firm, and I said to him one day, I was like, I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can deal with them. You can get them to, you can be the lawyer, and you can get them to deal with us. And he made one phone call, and the next day I had a team calling me and asking me if they could deal with me instead of my husband, and everything was going. They were like, this is the dates, and this is how long we have, and there's a team assembled, and we're doing like, 10 different evaluations. And the whole time everyone was saying, they kept warning me that, the same thing. An educational diagnosis is not the same as a medical diagnosis. She may not qualify as having autism. And every single time they would say that, I would laugh and say, yeah, I'm not really worried about that. I am not worried about that at all. And at the end, when the evaluations all came back, they were like, yeah, we know you haven't really been worried the whole entire time. Kind of. The results have come back as you expected them to, because I mean, when you have a kid that's 7 and is just not super verbal and is as developmentally delayed as she is, you have an idea that they're not going to probably be able to be in a normal classroom. And the schools, I believe it's called the MAPS evaluation, came back, of course, showing that she had an educational diagnosis of autism, and that the local school district couldn't handle her, that they would be busing her half an hour away to a school with a special autism classroom with 6 students, some paras, and it has a social worker that's in the room next door, it has special teachers, it has 3 or 4 paras, has speech, OT, they go to special swim lessons. It's awesome. It's been so good for her, and she loves it there. It's amazing. And she does have a normal first grade classroom that she visits. They're trying to integrate her into the classroom more and more. It's very busy, and she doesn't really love being there yet. Apparently she does love her art class, and she talks about her art class a bunch. She loves going going to her swim lessons every other week. It's been a really good thing. Once Paul made that phone call, things happened very, very quickly. But I mean, me calling and calling and calling the year before for weeks, got no call back, and I got totally ignored. And I mean, I've met all these people now, and I've sat in multiple IEP meetings with them, and they're good people that care about kids. I mean, I think it's just a matter of being overwhelmed and underfunded, and they have a ton on their plate. I'm not even mad at this point. I was mad. I was mad in the beginning. I will absolutely say I was mad, and I was kind of furious. But once you go and you actually meet the people and you sit in all these meetings, no, I'm not mad. They have a ton going on, and I'm sure it was a super busy time of year getting ready with things, and that it just kind of fell through, and it was a huge task, and it did end up being a huge task, and it just kind of got pushed to the side until somebody forgot about it, and I didn't call back again. So that taught me that I did have to keep advocating and advocating and advocating, because if I stopped, no one else was going to do it, and it wasn't like anyone was going to notice. I mean, when they came out here, when the school psychologist came out here, they asked, "Why do you want to have her at school?" I was like, I wanted her at school last year, guys. I mean, and I think they were a little bit embarrassed about that one. I went over what happened. If I had just let it drop, no one was going to be checking. No one was going to care about what happened to her. If I did nothing, no one would be fighting for her to be at school. If Paul hadn't called, if he hadn't kept pushing for her to be able to go to school, which, I mean, compared to like Patch, where I sent an email and was like, "We'll be at kindergarten roundup this day, and we'll just show up and it'll be fine and it'll be easy." What we had to go through to get Maggie to be able to go to school was, I mean, so many evaluations and so much more intensive. You do sort of have to become an advocate for your child and have to push and push and push to make things happen. So no one else is going to do that, is kind of another example of that. It would be very, very easy for Tessie to not have any sort of diagnosis right now, and it scares me to think what would have happened if I hadn't kept pushing with Tessie, because I don't know if any of those central apneas where she didn't start breathing until we rubbed her sternum, I don't know if she would have survived those instances. Beyond that, I don't know if we hadn't had Maggie first and that hadn't led to us pushing really, really hard. I'm guessing that she probably would have been identified with autism when she was a lot older, when she was like 3, maybe, I don't know. Definitely my experience with Maggie has changed who I am as a mom and made it so that I advocated for Tessie in a totally different way from the beginning. So they pushed and pushed and pushed to get her therapies from the time she was tiny. As parents, we do all that we can for our kids. When you have a child with a disability, all that you can ends up being even more than it would be otherwise, because it has to be. And so you push harder, you make stuff happen that wouldn't happen otherwise. That is my strategy. Be as polite and as kind as you can, and just keep pushing, because it's your kid and nobody else is going to push for you. No one else is going to push for them. I'm not sure if that makes me an advocate. I guess that makes me an advocate for my kid locally, and I'm talking about this because I guess it would have helped me to be able to listen to it. I guess I'm talking about it because there were moms that it helped me to listen to more through Messenger and Facebook groups and blogs, and listening to the voices of adults with autism. And that is the number one thing that I would recommend you to do, is to go out and read blogs of adults with autism and listen to what they say, listen to their insight. That needs its own blog. That needs to be at the beginning of a vlog, not at the end. Anyways, thanks for everyone who has stuck around here till the end. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, click like holding this little stuffed bunny of Tessie's. I need something to do with my hands when I'm talking, so I always end up picking something up. Hit subscribe, hit like so you don't miss anything. We're here almost every day on Mondays and Thursdays during April. I'm talking about autism. That is all for today, and I will see you guys tomorrow.